Sir, of course, all of these preparations, they're very difficult, and I can only imagine how difficult it may be, of course, has costs, right? I think I heard your previous interviews that, the assumptions you made in financial costs for having elections this year cannot be the same for the elections next year, because there will be more people coming of age to vote, more people will be registering, and of course inflation, not to mention a number of other things. So can you tell us? I know right now you're talking to Congress about your 2023 budget, but maybe if we can focus on the component that has to do with the barangay and SK elections.
Yes, Sir Klink, rightly so. We were given 8.441 billion pesos as the budget for the barangay and SK election to be held supposedly by December 5, 2022.
Right.
That's for December 5, 2022. It does not contain any provision concerning an increase in the honoraria of teachers or electoral board members,
right,
or even the COMELEC shouldering the 20% withholding taxes of the teachers. We have to understand that most recently, early part of the administration of our president, the tax exemption of the teachers were vetoed by the president. The president said there are other ways by which we can help the teachers. So yung pong 8.441 billion does not contain provisions for that. And so for the 8.441 billion pesos, exactly 5.7 billion is already reserved for the honoraria of teachers.
Okay.
And only the remaining portion will be reserved for our operational expenses and the procurement of supplies. So what happens if you reset the election? We have been saying that unfortunately, and this is the reality, that when you reset the election, there will be an increase in the budgetary requirement.
Right.
Simply because, as you have correctly pointed out, Sir Klink, there will be an increase in the number of voters. We are going to register anew. We are going to open up again and revive the registration of voters by last week of November, which will run from last week of November up to the last week of May next year, so that we will have at least 4 months to prepare before the election of October 2023. Increase in the number of voters, our projection was actually 5 to 7 million voters. If you have an increase in the number of voters, you will have an increase in the number of precincts, an increase in the number of electoral board members or teachers that will be serving for each precinct, increase in the number of supplies, election paraphernalia that will be needing, and therefore all of this will redound to an increase in budget.
Right.
Well, Sir Klink, originally we said we will push for the increase in the honoraria of teachers. And we said also if that is not possible, at least the COMELEC should be the one to shoulder the 20%, the tax. But however, it resulted to a 10 billion, based on our computation, more budget. So it's 8.5 plus 10 billion. And so there is this clear misunderstanding between the Commission on Election and on the part, likewise, of Congress.
I was going to say, there's pushback now coming from Senator Amy Marcos about this.
Yeah, we fully understand the predicament, the position of the Senate, more particularly the good Senator, the Honorable Senator Amy Marcos. And so we recomputed. We said maybe we can remove this one, we can remove this item, we can just increase the number of voters per precinct. Instead of 400, why not make it 600? And as of yesterday morning, we were able to arrive at 4 billion additional budget from the 8.5 plus 4. However, latter part of yesterday, maybe about 5 o'clock, we submitted 2.8 billion. 2.7 to 2.8 billion.
From 10, you were able to pare it down to 2.8.
Yes, but of course, that is based on the projected only about 4 to 5 million registered voters. If the number of voters will increase, it will correspond.
And you wouldn't know until they register.
Yeah. We will be able to know that by last week of May up to the early part of June. By that time, in accordance with the law, Sir Klink, it says there is a continuing appropriation, meaning the money that we have right now, based on the 8.441 billion, should remain with the COMELEC, and whatever is needed in order to support an election, we can go back to Congress and ask for a supplemental budget.
Right, but the interesting point there is that the whole premise about pushing back the elections is to save cost in a recovery year from the pandemic. And yet, from what I understand, and you have to correct me if I'm wrong, Chairman, it's turning out to be more expensive. Is that a fair observation to make?
Well, I do not want to. I do not want to say you are wrong, but I want to say that it would appear to be yes.
Okay.
You are correct. When I was facing Congress, especially in the House of Representatives, and we were asked that question, we said that unfortunately, and with all due respect, I would really like to say, Your Honors, please, we will not be able to save, because the money that we have is exactly for December 5, 2022.
And to top it all off, and I think maybe I need you to clarify this. Again, with the premise that postponing the elections will mean savings, supposedly for COVID resiliency, that money that was appropriated for you for having elections this December does not go back to the National Treasury.
Yes, sir. It will have to stay
right?
with the COMELEC.
It has to stay with the COMELEC.
And the provision says there is a continuing appropriation, meaning, and the COMELEC was able to already allocate the same to the different procurements.
You already spent, because your preparations are continuing.
Yes, sir. We were able, when we awarded the contracts, therefore, certain amounts were already allocated for this item, for this item, and for this item, and therefore, nothing will be left in the 8.441 billion except the honoraria of teachers, which will be about 5.7 billion pesos.
Wow. Well, I mean, I don't envy you, your situation. And we're not even talking about, is it correct to say that, you know, when you talk about these budgets, these are special allocations for the elections itself, not for the budget for COMELEC itself, which is in the National Expenditures Plan, or NEP.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
That is correct. This is a separate special budget.
Okay.
Our budget that we are going to defend to Congress is from 10 billion, reduced to 4.7 billion, increased by another 5.2 billion pesos only. It does not include any budgetary allotment for the barangay and SK election. It's a separate independent budget.
Right. Now, firstly, on the special allocation, as you said, there's a way to do it. You're able to pare your estimated cost from 10 million to 2.8. But there are consequences. As you said, there are more people per precincts.
Yes, sir.
Have you had time? I know your attention is being pulled in many different directions, but have you had time to compute, for example, what is the implication for the voter? I mean, if it means that beforehand, a voter can probably go through the line in an hour with from 400 to 600 per precinct. Did you estimate that they double the time they have to spend at the precinct to line up, vote, and finish the process?
Well, you are also again correct. Lucky for the COMELEC, Sir Klink, that we have a lot of experiences as far as election management and conduct of election is concerned. Well, during the automated election from 2010 to 2022, because when we conduct the election for the barangay and SK, it's a manual election.
Okay.
For the automated election, we have on an average 800 voters.
Okay.
Of course, 800 voters, people are lining up.
Right.
But in the case of a computer or manual election, 400 voters should be the average. But if we're going to make it 600, we have to increase the number of chairs.
You have to do the queuing computation,
And we have to increase the number of chairs from, for example, from 5 to 10 to 12.
Otherwise, people will be standing
But
up.
of course, there will be concerns about the COVID-19. The virus is still here. We have to ensure proper physical distancing and the queuing of people. So this is a matter which will oblige the COMELEC to really strengthen our resolve to prevent the spread of disease.
Not to mention the challenge of finishing all the voting within that window on voting day.
Yes, sir.
Which also, again, goes back to what you're saying. I mean,
and
compensation for the teachers and the other workers. Wow.
Yes, sir. Take note, Sir Klink, that the voting will only be by 7 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not the same as the...
It's not the whole day as it was in the regular election.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Now, going back to the main budget, the proposed budget in the National Expenditure Plan, or NEP, when you submitted your request to DBM, there was something around 9 or 10 billion.
Yes, that's right.
And then what was in the proposed budget was something like 4-point-something billion.
4.7 billion, Sir Klink. And luckily for us, Secretary Amina Pangandaman gave us additional 500 million for our COMELEC building. We had been proposing that
for capital outlay.
For capital outlay, we were given 500 million, and we were lucky that when we defended our budget in the House of Representatives, Congress again again gave us an institutional, realigned certain budget and gave us additional 500 more. So all in all, we have 1 billion budget for the initial construction of the building, of which, according to our experts and our architects and engineers, will be needing at least more or less 1.5 billion.
Wow.
So kulang pa po kami ng 500 million.
So besides the permanent office for COMELEC, which I think is quite important
Yes.
for your security, right? But what might not be funded because of that reduction from your request of 10-something billion to DBM, and what's in the proposed budget or the NEP of 4-point-something billion? What has to go? Because you have to adjust, right?
We have to adjust certain requirements, such as, if, for example, we will be needing, for every precinct, will be needing at least 3 indelible ink. So we have to have only 2 bottles of indelible ink. If we are going to print this number of election returns, because of the smaller number of precincts, instead of 239,000 from the original 199,000, we'll be only having about, based on our projection, 220,000. Then in that case, lesser number of other election materials, forms, and supplies, then that will greatly reduce.
What about for your MOOE, I mean for your OPEX, as we call it in the private sector?
Yes, sir.
Will you have constraints now on hiring people that you need? You talked about capital outlay for the office. What about capital outlay for computers, other office equipment? Or will that have to... will you have to scale back because of the reduced difference between the NEP and the...
Well, because at least as far as the NEP is concerned, Sir Klink, it's not affected by whatever is the adjustment in the budget of the BSK, being a separate and independent budget. But what we have right now is we have more or less 900 vacant positions in the commissioner election, and if we will not be able to fill up the position, 982, and if we're not going to fill up the position, then we can use the fund to finance other, because the COMELEC is a constitutional body with fiscal autonomy.
Right. Well, wow. I don't even know how to wrap my head around that, but we'll talk again to Chairman George Garcia of the Commission on Elections about the future. We'll be right back.